Hello and welcome to Select and Start, the podcast about meaningful and memorable video games. I'm your host, Kiefer, and every episode I bring on a guest who selects a game that made an impact on their life. I have a wonderful and exciting guest with me today. He is an award-winning podcaster, author, and game designer. His new book, The Ultimate Fantasy Character Creator, is out now. It is my honor to welcome Jeff Stormer. Jeff, how are you today?
I am so excited to be here. I am doing great. We were just talking off mic about how excited we are for this conversation. This is going to be the highlight of my day.
I love that because it is already the end of the day. So thank you for giving me your Friday evening so we can talk about this wonderful video game. And I love the energy coming right in here. Jeff, you and I have been talking about doing an episode together for a long time. And the stars have finally aligned on this special time of the year, Fighting Game February. This is a month-long celebration of kicking ass and taking quarters. Before we go one-on-one in video games, though, I want the people to know a little bit more about you. What do you do and what do you like?
What do I do and what do I like? I am a tabletop podcaster, game designer, I guess author. I guess I do have to add that to the list of things because I have a book that's in stores now, and that's a weird feeling. But you primarily probably know of my work through either Party of One, which is an actual play podcast about getting to know interesting people through the shared act of play. In it, I sit down with people and we play a 2-player role-playing game and have a conversation about our creative processes along the way. Or All My Fantasy Children right here on the Moonshot Network, which is a podcast about making characters and imagining worlds with your best friend. My best friend and I, Aaron Catano Saez, we take listener-submitted prompts and we use them to imagine and flesh out a shared fantasy world that we have lovingly called fantasy. And there's other stuff that I do that you can find at jeffstormer.com. That's a lot of the stuff that I like. I like games, tabletop games. I have famously often said, which makes my presence, which made, I think, my initial prep for this show difficult, was that, like, I often don't say that I don't really like video games in general. It's not like a brain pattern that I have is like being, I'm a very much a tabletop guy, but like, I love games. I love professional wrestling. I majored in college in superhero comic books. And so, like, these are a lot of the things that I love, which probably all point towards the reason that we're talking about the game that we're talking about today.
No, that totally makes sense. And your interests align with a lot of what my guest interests end up being, because from the beginning of the show, you hear people talk about like, oh, I like professional wrestling. I like tabletop games, that kind of stuff, superheroes, comic books, things like that. That those are basically the archetypes of different people that come on the show, and you embody all of them. So you're basically going to be the ultimate guest in that way, the super guest.
I feel good.
Yeah.
I'm holding this title, and if anybody wants to come at me, then they can try and throw me over the top rope. But I guarantee you both feet will not touch the floor.
Yeah, people who like the GameCube and the Dreamcast, I'm thinking of other archetypes of people who come on here. But you have this laundry list of things that you like to do, and you keep busy because of that. You said that video games isn't really a big part of you, but we do need to talk about your relationship with video games a little bit because this is a video game podcast.
Yeah.
Gamers love to gatekeep. We got to check your credentials. What is your history with video games, your relationship with it? Who or what got you into it? What is Jeff's portrait of a video gamer?
So I have had video games as a part of my life for as long as I can remember. Like, I had 3 brothers, and my parents got us the Nintendo Entertainment System when we were 3, 4, 5 years old. I've been around video games my whole life, and yet despite that, like, I've often bounced off of a great many of them. Like, I say that flippantly and often confrontationally to like position myself like in conversations. If people are like, "Oh, are you into Destiny?" I'm like, I don't do Pokemon. Whatever you're trying to pitch me, I'm not interested. But like, I did gravitate towards telling for the things that I eventually like made my life and career around. Like, even from a young age, I gravitated towards like role-playing video games. Dragon Warrior 3 was one of the first games that I ever played. And I remember being kind of like just captivated and hooked by the experience of it. And like that opening sequence when you're fighting a dragon, or when your dad is fighting a dragon on the lip of a volcano. And it's like Akira Toriyama animation, but done on the NES. So it's all 8-bit. It's something really special. And that like lodged in my brain and pushed me towards a love of like fantasy role-playing stories in a way that like captivated me probably pushed me towards like tabletop role-playing games. Like that kind of story lodged itself in my brain from a very young age.
Interesting. So you aren't much of a gamer, but it is still embedded in your DNA as something that puts you on the path that you're on today.
It is. It like I said, like I've grown up around them, right? So like it's always been a thing that like I one of the reasons like I'm very bad at video. Like I like if you put me in front of like I have poor hand-eye coordination, and so like a lot of like quick trigger games I just bounce off of. But like being around games and talking about games and a particular fascination of mine from a very young age was like reading video game manuals. Like video game manuals captivated me from a spectacularly young age. Like flipping through and reading about the different classes and different magic items that you can find, and looking at a drawing of a sword that was on fire and going like, oh man, that's probably so cool to use the fire sword. And then in the actual game, it's like not very good, but they made a very sick drawing of a sword that was on fire. That was a thing that like captivated me from a young age, of just like experiencing games through this art of like reading them. And when we were very young, I would say like until I think probably they stopped regularly publishing it. We were subscribed to Nintendo Power back when Nintendo Power did very specifically. They did like mid-issue comic books, and so like following the Metroid comic book of the early 90s was a big part of my childhood, and like all of these things like connected to me in a very like primal way that pushed me towards, the person that I would become.
Right, right. It's interesting. Your relationship with video games pushed you more towards the analog. Like you like the
Yeah.
manuals, and I can see how like reading the manuals informs your interest in tabletop games. Again, the analog form of gaming, so to speak. Is this because like it sounds like you're sort of disappointed by like the implementation or expression of ideas, and it's like you just want to like sort of like nurture your own imagination instead, which is probably why you gravitate towards RPGs.
That's probably a part of it. It's also, I think, like it's not even a disappointment or a frustration with like the games themselves as much as like my own inability to like. For me, there has always been a little bit of a wall between like the joys of the game to me, which are like experiencing the story and like discovering the world and all of these things. The wall being like at a certain point, you have to be very good at clicking specific buttons quickly and in order. And like that is the piece of the puzzle where I've always like fallen off, like it's pushed me towards tabletop games where like you can kind of that sort of creative expression becomes the equivalent of pushing buttons very quickly. And the other thing is that like in adulthood, it's one of the reasons why I now watch Twitch streams. Like I became attracted to like Twitch, like let's plays of video games very specifically because like oftentimes like the late game story of a game was simply out of reach for me because like I'm not good like that good at the actual game parts of games.
Okay.
So like watching somebody else play it and getting to like watch the story and like watch their reactions and watch them fail like that, but also reading those manuals and playing those games where I can imagine like all of those things kind of opened up the joys of the game experience while like freeing me from the prison that is my own clumsy fingers.
Right. The prison of completionism. I
Yeah.
understand. I appreciate that. It's a very wonderful, specific insight. And I think that helps sort of, because it seems like, video games, they're like this, such a time commitment. And also this, as an interactive medium, it's a very much like you are asked to remain engaged as much as possible.
Yeah.
I can see like between like the amount of time you have to put into an actual effort you have to put into it versus watching a movie or reading a book or television show, what have you. I could see why that would feel insurmountable to some people. But you do also
Yeah.
say like the barriers are being taken down, and it's ultimately your relationship with the thing, not the true objective way to see an ending, so to speak.
It is funny talking about like how I have struggled with like pushing buttons quickly and in order when the game that we are ultimately going to sit down today is really a game with very little outside of the world of pushing buttons very quickly in order. Like I see
Yeah.
the contradiction there. I
Yeah, I'm
want
glad you
that
pointed
noted
it
up
out
front.
because I didn't want to point it out immediately, but you went there already. Great, thanks.
I see it.
Yeah, perfect. So you pointed out Dragon Warrior 3 as this defining game for you. Was there anything between Dragon Warrior 3 and Marvel vs. Capcom 2 that you really connected with? What are some other like crucial texts for Jeff Stormer?
So it's very funny because the other text, one of the other like formative, like life defining texts for me. And I did not realize there was a common thread between these games until thoroughly in adulthood, despite the obvious visual connections between them. When I was like 7 years old when Chrono Trigger came out, and experiencing Chrono Trigger in real time was like, for me, it is the exact same experience as the opening sequence of Almost Famous when he puts on the headphones, like seeing Chrono Trigger, and again, watching my brothers play Chrono Trigger and sitting back, experiencing it through that context, that changed me. It is one of the greatest experiences and story experiences of my life, is getting to see all of those pieces come together. And then I didn't realize until adulthood that both Dragon Quest and Chrono Trigger are Akira Toriyama. And then when it's pointed out, I distinctly remember being like, okay, let me go look. Surely I didn't miss. Oh yeah, that's just Goku with red hair, huh? You just gave Goku a sword, didn't you? Okay, sure.
Yeah.
That's on me for missing that one.
Yeah, no, it feels pretty obvious. But look, Ball. Chrono Trigger is one of the best things ever made. So,
oh my god,
Dragon Ball.
I know Dragon Ball.
Dragon Ball.
And it's very funny because I was watching Dragon Ball at the same time, and my brain, my child brain, could not put together that these child men, all looked the same.
Yeah. This guy just following you around your life, changing it constantly. It's yeah, Dragon Quest. Yeah, Chrono Trigger. Guess what? The anime that breaks through in America.
Every single corner. And it was not until so much later in life that I was like, man, this Akira Toriyama guy's pretty good, huh?
Yeah. He's everywhere and he's great at it. R.I.P.
R.I.P.
What's your relationship with video games in the present? Do you have any consoles in your home?
I have a Switch.
Okay.
I did fall in love with a second fighting game, but primarily my wife uses the Switch to play Balatro. I've got, and I've got my lap. I mean, Balatro's got me. Balatro's got me bad, and it has shaken my ability to say I don't like video games because Balatro really got into my head. But I have a Switch. I've got some games on my laptop, and they're very much in the vein of puzzle and card games are really my speed, especially because they give me a thing to multitask on when I'm paying attention to things. It's the equivalent of doodling in a little pad. If I'm sitting on my laptop, I can just pull open a solitaire or a card game and just kind of idly flip cards around.
Right. Your Subway Surfers.
Your Subway Surfers. Yeah.
Yeah.
I did fall deep into the Dragon Ball FighterZ hole.
Uh-huh.
Again, Akira Toriyama. This guy's pretty good.
Every video game I've ever played is by Akira Toriyama's art.
It keeps hitting me. I really connected, and I think there's a common thread between that and Marvel vs. Capcom in that they're very different flows, but that trio fighter style is very engaging.
Yeah.
Also, it is a game that, much like Marvel vs. Capcom, lets me play the worst shittiest dude, and if I can play the worst shittiest dude, that's the secret sauce for me. Is I can point at a guy and go, this guy sucks. I'm gonna play him exclusively.
Give me a loser.
God, my go-to trio, and it's very satisfying to play them in ranked matches because I can feel the anger through the screen as I will break out Tien Shinhan, Yamcha, and Krillin, the real these guys are gonna die squad. And every time I land against an optimized trio of the best A tier characters, and I'm I'm gonna push you to the edge. I'm gonna push you to the edge with my weird little guys.
Yeah, no, I get it. Especially Yamcha, historically in Dragon Ball fighting games, he always feels super fun to play because he's
so much fun to play, and he's so fun in Fighter. His rush, his Wolfang Fist rush is so incredibly fun, and it's so fun to just kind of juggle. And then like there's a he's got one of the wildest like ground rush games in the entire game, and it's so much fun to just spam it and then wait until to see if they're gonna break the combo.
Yeah. Now that you mention it, and I feel stupid for not pointing out the comparison before, but like the fact that there is like, it's a tag team game with a super meter that accumulates levels. I can't believe I've never like put the Marvel vs. Capcom Dragon Ball FighterZ connection there before.
It's a different rhythm, but a very similar like structure, and my brain connected with that in a very real way.
Even the assists. Oh my god. Okay.
Mm-hmm,
I feel so ridiculous now. Anyway.
You're seeing it. You're seeing, and well, and to be fair, I'm also seeing it. Like I'm talking about it like I noticed it before this moment.
No, the thing is, like, I just covered Guilty Gear last episode, and that's the same developer Arc System, and so like it's all on my mind, and I just now put Jesus Christ.
It's great. It's so the FighterZ is so good. FighterZ had me doing the thing that I never thought I would do in my life, which is like speculating about downloadable content and making DLC like dream lists.
Mm-hmm.
None of my dream list people made it into the game, but like I was very proud of my dream list.
Give me an example.
So the thing that FighterZ, the DLC, I feel like was missing most prominently was like the game never really got into Dragon Ball.
Right.
The game was very Z. And they added a lot of GT, but like I was very disappointed that they never brought Dragon Ball characters into the fold. And like they added Young Goku, but it's very specifically GT Young Goku.
Right.
I wanted like Mercenary Tao. I wanted like what I wanted very specifically was that silly mech that Pilaf, Shu, and Mai form in. Like, I wanted to fight in a silly 3-person mech.
Yeah.
The character that I really wanted was Android 8, the Frankenstein.
Oh, I remember.
Give me Frankenstein.
You got to check out the Tenkaichi games. Those are the ones that have...
Those are the ones that put everybody in, and I adore that very much. I appreciate their commitment to just being like, farmer with shotgun. You know what? Have fun.
Yeah, because like every dream character you put is just somebody that's in Tenkaichi 3. Like it's just like every single one. The older Tenkaichi games definitely felt like they were power scaling the characters a little bit. Like so many gag characters that are in there for completionist sake to say like I can do any matchup I want. Yeah, fucking a pool from Frieza's henchmen. Put that in the game. You talked about how you will play RPGs because that aligns more with your tabletop sensibilities. Are there other RPGs that don't have art by Akira Toriyama that you're into?
Final Fantasy 6 and 7 were big parts of my childhood, big parts of my adolescence, big parts of my teenage years. By proxy, because I've watched her play it several times over, thanking someone and blaming someone are really two sides of the same coin. And I use these to describe the fact that because of my wife, I now am up to date and a fan of the Kingdom Hearts series.
That's right.
It can go both ways. I mean, in Kingdom Hearts, there's like it's impossible for me not to love it and love it in a myriad of different ways all at once. But like, I've watched a lot of my wife play Kingdom Hearts. I really connected with Final Fantasy 6 and 7. There's something about like I will recognize it is very cool when someone has a sword and someone else has a big robot gun. I'm seeing that there's a common thread there.
Right. Any computer RPGs or Western RPGs, or is it just pretty like square?
Pretty JRPG heavy. I'm trying to think if there's any like Western. There was a game that like I will say like took over my life for several years throughout my young adulthood that I do find myself coming back to every few years because I think it did do for me what no game has done since. And like I've heard a lot of things about Midnight Suns that make me want to check out Marvel Midnight Suns, but like I played and modded and created mods and created mod storylines and played those mod storylines for hundreds of hours for the 2005 video game computer role-playing game Freedom Force. I think it was 2005. I'm looking this up now. It was 2002. Okay. It was a tactical role-playing, like an RTS role-playing game about like a team of legally distinct from the Avengers doing superhero stuff. And then there was a sequel in 2005, Freedom Force versus the Third Reich, where they traveled back in time to fight Nazis. Like I said, I have as from childhood, I have been a superhero enthusiast. I majored in them in school, and like a superhero game where you are playing like top-down strategy of like a superhero team where you can also mod it, and like there was a thriving mod community where I can like put in my favorite superheroes and do my own favorite superhero storylines. This game became my entire to the point where like there were people in college that like had to have like a sit down of like, Jeff, you need to have a personality that's not this video game that no one else has ever played.
Yeah, you don't know anything about Destiny. You said, what is that, Pokemon? Whatever. But you do have you have such a strong emotional connection to Freedom Force that you modded the damn game.
Oh, I imported characters into the game and then built out all of my favorite. I then like downloaded the skins that people had created to make my own characters. So, like I was the modding that was happening in Freedom Force versus the Third Reich was elaborate.
Wow.
It top tier.
Okay. Yeah. No, there's the comic stuff. Jeff, when we talked about potential topics to discuss on the show, you told me that a game that genuinely means a lot to you is Marvel vs. Capcom 2. That was the only game you suggested, but you gave me an alternate pitch as well. Rather than talking about a single game, you suggested focusing on a specific character across several fighting games. Namely, and these are your words here, your favorite video game character of all time. There is a picture of him behind you. Dan Hibiki.
There is. A friend painted that, hand painted that for Christmas. What? There are, not only is there a portrait of him behind me, there are not one, but two Dan Hibiki Funko Pops on my shelf
my
right
God.
now. One Christmas, during like a Secret Santa with a gag gift component, a friend gave me 13 Dan Hibiki Funko Pops, and like I gave most of them away as a follow-up gag gift the following year. But I specifically kept at least two of them because I was like, it's important to me that I have multiple Dan's Hibiki in my house.
I cannot sit comfortably in my home unless there is a Dan Hibiki in my line of sight.
I have instituted what was at one point a joke, but has become an actual guiding principle for me around like Street Fighter merch or like game adaptations or sequel games, which is no Dan, no sale. This is a policy that is very simple. If you don't want to put Dan in your game, you're not selling to me.
Okay.
This backfired in a very big way because I was at PAX Unplugged and I saw that there was a Street Fighter card game, Street Fighter Exceed, by level 99 games, I think. And like in my head, whenever I see somebody pitching like a Street Fighter game or a card game or something, I will approach it with the confrontational attitude of like, I know it's no Dan, no sale, and you're not going to have Dan. And I walked up and I looked the sales guy who was like who I learned at the point that later was one of the lead designers of the game. And I looked him in the eye and I was like, he was like, you want to try a playthrough of the game? And I was like, only if I can play Dan. And he looked me dead in the eyes and goes, yeah, sure. Let me show you the basic rundown of the game. Then I'll grab you the Dan deck. But I got to let you know, he's a little bit weird because he's Dan. And I was like, well, now I have to buy the entire run of cards. Now I have to buy the $90 3-pack of all the decks.
Hoist it by your own rule. It's great.
They got me. Yes, Dan. Yes,
yes, Dan. Yes, man.
Man's got to have a code. You know, like you gotta live. If you live by the sword, you gotta die by the sword.
Yeah, the weakest possible sword a person can die by, but it's
intentionally designed as such.
Yeah. So what attracts you? You alluded to this earlier. You just love a loser.
I love a loser.
Is Dan Hibiki the reason for that? Or is this like, I love a loser and therefore I love Dan Hibiki?
I think it's a little bit of both. Like I latched on to Dan from a very young, like I was probably like 13, I guess not young, but like I was 13, like in the mid 2000s, when the internet was really taking off. So like playing Marvel vs. Capcom 2 was a thing that I got very into in my early teenage years. And that was because like it had a bunch of superheroes and I was a superhero guy. And like this was a video game where I could like watch Captain America beat up a guy. And like I like Captain America a lot. So like I was playing it and like in learning about various characters, I was like, who is this guy that looks like Ryu, but also sucks? Like, this guy is bad. I was like, I gotta know what this guy's deal is. Similar to how I engage with role-playing games and video game manuals and such, like, I love fighting game lore.
Yeah.
I love the interconnected stories of Street Fighter characters and the complicated histories of things and, like, following story modes and, like, reading about, like, how characters interact. I was already reading about, like, a lot of, like, one-off fighting game characters. But then I was like, I gotta know what this guy's deal is. And then I read the full story of Dan Hibiki, and I was like, this guy is a weird loser who is also behind the scenes a gigantic middle finger of a character. Who is also, like, lovably pathetic and, like, has a real heart. Like, has, like, a secret heart where, like, he does actually unintentionally bring out the best in people. Dan Hibiki is such a weird balancing act that they have accomplished with this character that was strictly created as kind of a flippant gag. Like, I fell in love with him immediately as a character. But then learning that he was a weird loser. Then I learned context. I guess I should specify for the listeners. He was intentionally designed in Street Fighter Alpha 3, his first appearance, and like to a certain degree in subsequent games, to be the worst character in the game. He is intentionally designed in his first appearance to be worse than every other character in the game.
Yes.
I must apologize for Wimp Lo. He is an idiot. We have purposely trained him wrong, as a joke.
If you've got an ass, I'll kick it!
And the reason is because SNK had released not Fatal Fury, it's Art of Fighting. They had released Art of Fighting, which had characters that were almost copyright infringement versions of Ryu and Ken. And so they made the character of Dan Hibiki in Street Fighter Alpha styled not necessarily after Ryu and Ken, but after Ryo and Robert Smith, the SNK characters. And they made...
Sorry.
What is
like
it?
From The Cure?
I think it's Hold on. It might. Let me make sure that it's Robert Smith, or if it's... What is the characters? Now you've got... I think that you're right that I've got it wrong. Hold on. Now I got to confirm this.
Here's the thing. If it's Robert Smith, that rules.
I wish. I hope it's the guy from The Cure. Robert Garcia. It's Robert Garcia. Robert Smith is the guy from The Cure.
Okay.
It would be cooler if it was Robert Smith from The Cure. They intentionally style a lot of Dan Hibiki after Ryo and Robert from Art of Fighting. He's got Ryo's gi with the t-shirt underneath and the torn pants and the bare feet. He's got Robert's hair with the two strands and a ponytail. He's got Ryo's fighting stance. He throws a fireball in the way that Ryo does, where like it doesn't go very far. Like he is intentionally a riff on these characters who were intentionally kind of ripping off Street Fighter characters. So he is a Xerox of a Xerox. And also we're going to make him worse than every character of the game. He's going to be like, and he's going to be intentionally bad as our middle finger to the guys that ripped us off. And that rules so hard. That kicks so much ass to say, yeah, we made a character. We took your guys and made a character. We made him a dog shit fighter that everyone makes fun of.
Yeah. And it's one thing to just like have that as a one and done gag character, as like a middle finger to your competition. But this character has endured. I know because I didn't play the Street Fighter Alpha games growing up, but I did play Street Fighter 4. And I did play the Marvel Capcom games, and he's in those.
And that's because like he became an unexpected fan favorite and also favorite of the developers, because it's really like it is a core truth of the universe that it's really funny to have a loser. Like like everybody kind of loves a jobber. Like it's a very core rule of wrestling that like
Mr. Satan in Dragon Ball.
he's such a Mr. Satan. And like, then they end up giving him like accidentally this really wonderful story with a lot of pathos where his dad is murdered by Sagat. And so his dad is the reason that Sagat has an eye patch. And his canon ending, like he finally fights Sagat, and like Sagat recognizes him as the son of the man that he killed in like a fury, and he has such regret over killing this man and like making an orphan of his son, and he sees what hate has done to the son of the man that he killed, that he throws the fight and pretends to lose, but that also entirely goes to Dan Hibiki's head, so he makes his own knockoff school.
Oh my God.
It's great. And then like all of these story beats just make this character like so much better as like this loser with a genuine relatable story that like things go well for and like gets a happy resolution. And then it immediately gets undercut by him going, "Oh yeah, I'm the hero of this story, and I need to be acting. I need to be the center of attention, and I need to make everything about." Like, it's so good. He's a loser who sucks, and he's a shit dude, and it's great. And then he goes on to like make a school that is bad, and he attracts Sakura and Blanca, and they just like canonically hang around his school, not because he's teaching them anything, because they just kind of like him as a guy, and so they just sort of hang around. Like,
it's like an after school club.
it truly it truly is. And Sakura at several points gestured towards, she's like, "I didn't actually learn anything from Dan. To be clear, he's not a good fighter, but he's nice and he lets me hang out at his house after school." And like, but in his mind, he's like, "These are my students. I am mastering the art of Saikyo Ryu. Like, I have taught them everything that I know, and they will go forth and become great fighters."
It's like, yeah, he's a little weird, but like he provides a safe third space for us, you know?
Yeah, he's opening a third space in the community. And then like a prominent part of his storylines in subsequent games is that he is trying and failing to open like a neighborhood gym, like a neighborhood dojo, because he's like, if I could just get a VHS, if I can pay rent on my school, well, then I'm going to be a celebrity. And that's it. I'm done. Like, this weird little freak man is so funny and so relatable and so joyful a character that he's my favorite video game character of all time.
Look, you said you were 13 when you became fascinated with this character. There's way worse people 13-year-olds can be obsessed with. Like, at least you were like looking at fucking Andrew Tate videos instead. If Dan Hibiki saves lives.
Dan Hibiki kept me on the right path as a child and like has helped me grow into a better man. That's the promise. And if you pay $29.99 for his VHS series, he can do the same for you.
Yeah.
That's really what I've come here to say is that we should all be buying Dan Hibiki's VHS workouts.
Absolutely. No one has a VCR anymore, but buy those VHS tapes. He's good for the community.
He's good. He's good for the community.
Yeah. So let's talk about a game featuring Dan Hibiki.
Let's do this.
Let's go for a ride.
Let's go. Kiefer, I want to take you for a ride.
Take me for a ride. Let's talk about Marvel vs. Capcom 2.
New Age of Heroes.
Select your heroes.
I wanna take you for a ride. 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 I wanna take you for a ride.
Marvel vs. Capcom 2, New Age of Heroes, is a crossover fighting game developed by Capcom. As the name suggests, it features characters from both Marvel Comics and Capcom's own video game franchises. This is the 5th Capcom game I've covered on the show, and the 3rd game I've covered featuring characters from Marvel Comics, since I also did Insomniac's Marvel's Spider-Man and the X-Men Origins Wolverine video game. Wait, no, it's actually the 4th video game technically, because Iron Man is a playable character in Tony Hawk's Underground, and I did that on the show too. So 4th game. This is the 2nd game bearing the Marvel vs. Capcom title. It's actually the 4th game in the crossover fighting series that started in 1996 with X-Men vs. Street Fighter, continues in 1997 with Marvel Superheroes vs. Street Fighters, and then morphed into the cleaner title they Sean Parkered it, Marvel vs. Capcom in 1998. Distinct to the identity of the Marvel vs. Capcom series is its tag team combat. Players select multiple characters in a character select screen. In the first Marvel vs. Capcom game, this was limited to just 2 characters per team, but in Marvel vs. Capcom 2, they expanded it to 3 characters. 1 character is controlled at a time, with the other people on your team able to be tagged in at any time. As you take damage, part of your health bar will be depleted, but another sliver of it will turn red. Swapping out will allow that character to recover that red portion of their health while the other team members fight. Fighting is simplified in Marvel vs. Capcom 2 versus the rest of the series that preceded it. Instead of having 3 punch and 3 kick attacks with varying strengths, there are only 2. The other 2 buttons instead are now assist buttons, letting you bring in one of your team members to perform an assist attack at any time. While performing that assist, your team member is vulnerable to attack and will receive double the amount of damage. Also new to Marvel vs. Capcom 2 is the snapback mechanic. You can use 1 super meter to do a normal attack that will knock your opponent out of the playing field and bring out their next available partner. If the timer runs out in a fight before an entire team is defeated, the team with the highest amount of remaining health wins. That means if one side only has 1 fighter left, but their health is full, while the other side has 3 remaining fighters, but they only have a little bit of health between them, the other side with only 1 fighter can still win because they have more overall health. There are 56 playable characters, the most of any Marvel vs. Capcom game. For comparison, there were 15 playable characters in Marvel vs. Capcom 1. The representation is evenly split, with 28 Marvel characters and 28 Capcom characters. 3 original characters were made for this game, representing the Capcom half: Ruby Heart, a French pirate captain; Sun Sun, a staff-wielding monkey girl; and a Mingo, a big-bellied cactus man in a sombrero. The large roster was made possible by reusing assets from previous Capcom fighting games, not just the ones featuring Marvel characters, but also Street Fighter Alpha and Darkstalkers. Talking about the people who actually developed this game a little bit, there are 6 credited planners for Marvel vs. Capcom 2: Tatsuya Nakei, Katsuhiro Eguchi, Buruma, Ryota Suzuki, Shinichiro Obata, and Hidetoshi Ihizawa. One of the most vital aspects of Marvel vs. Capcom 2 was its distinctive art, done by Japanese illustrator, character designer, and game creator Bengus. The game uses hand-drawn 2D sprites against 3D backgrounds. Tetsuya Shibata and Masayuki Endo were the game's sound designers. The music of the game was composed by Tetsuya Shibata and Mitsuhiko Takano. This was Mitsuhiko Takano's first credited game at Capcom, where he continues to work to this day. Most notably, he composed the music for The Legend of Zelda: The Minish Cap. Tetsuya Shibata joined Capcom in 1997 and worked on over 20 games in his 12-year tenure with the company. He composed the music for the first 2 Power Stone games, co-composed the first Monster Hunter game, as well as the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th Devil May Cry games. I just wanted to throw in this little detail about him because I think it's cute. He left Capcom and founded his own music company in 2009 called Unique Note. Joining him early on was another Capcom composer, Yoshino Aoki, who worked on the 3rd and 4th Breath of Fire games, as well as several of the Mega Man Battle Network and Star Force games. Hell yeah. The 2 of them are now married, and she's the vice president of Unique Note. So they're a cute composer couple, and I love that.
That's great. I love that. Oh my God.
Yeah, you can find love through music. Marvel vs. Capcom 2 does not have a story mode or even a storyline. There are no character-specific endings for clearing arcade mode.
You just get a screen that says, "Great job."
It's just like, cool. Here is a synopsis of the game taken word for word from the IMDb page for Marvel vs. Capcom 2. A pirate woman named Ruby Heart, who united 52 of Earth's strongest heroes and villains, transports them to another dimension on her enormous battleship to fight an evil shapeshifter named Abyss, who wants to rule all realities. To that, I would like to add, shenanigans ensue.
Marvel vs. Capcom 2: New Age of Heroes.
Marvel vs. Capcom 2 New Age of Heroes was originally released in arcades and on Sega Dreamcast in the year 2000. Other games released in 2000 include Baldur's Gate 2, Diablo 2, Grandia 2, Dead or Alive 2, Deus Ex, Final Fantasy IX, Resident Evil Code Veronica, Shenmue, Skies of Arcadia, Tekken Tag Tournament, and Jet Set Radio, another Sega Dreamcast game, which I previously covered on the show with Trevor Hegelbon from No Cartridge, and The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask, but my personal favorite game of all time, which I previously covered on the show with Jameson Borak. really quickly, I know you're not much of a gamer yourself, Jeff, but have you played any of the games I just mentioned?
I've played Dead or Alive 2 for sure. I was aware, like Dead or Alive. All of the fighting games of that era speak to me. What a year! Like, just what a year for games in general.
Oh, yeah.
Spent a lot of time wandering some ports or watching my friends wander ports looking for sailors in Shenmue.
Mhm.
Baldur's Gate 2, definitely, like, Baldur's Gate 2 I spent some decent time with, because like that was also, this would have been right as I was like getting into Dungeons and Dragons, and so like a D&D video game coming out at the same time like definitely like caught my attention. But just generally, like, what a year. Like,
Oh, yeah.
what a moment for games. Like, I know that everybody says that the year that they turned 13 is the best year for video game history, but like, that's a pretty good year for video games.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, my favorite game came out that year, so and
Mine
it looks like
too.
yours too. Yeah, there we go. And going back to your favorite game, what made you decide on Marvel versus Capcom 2 to talk about on this episode?
There are 56 people in this game.
56? 56? Oh man, now that's all I can think about!
That alone, like, for so much of my sensibility, in any video game, in anything, I am always drawn towards this carries through into my tabletop life in a big way. Like, I love having an obscene number of options. This comes up big in like tabletop games that I play where there's a lot of like fan-made third-party classes. Like, if you catch me with a game with a lot of like third-party class options, I'm just downloading all of them and being like, I got 47 options for classes, you take your pick. That's a big thing. That also ties into like what made me fall in love with this game. And you mentioned that it came out in arcades, and like that's where I fell in love with the game. There was an arcade in the Burlington Center Mall in Mount Holly, New Jersey, which is now closed. The arcade closed and then the mall closed. The arcade sat directly in front of like a gigantic bronze sculpture of an elephant, of like a child on an elephant, that was like a very strange thing to have in a mall. But I think they've moved the elephant elsewhere. It was a Xenos Frudakis sculpture of a boy on elephant that was it sat in front of this like giant elephant fountain, and it was the arcade in the mall by my house, or like a short drive from like a 20-minute drive from my house. And like I remember going into that mall, hearing the music, quarters in my pocket, Annie Ann's pretzel in my hand, walking up to that cartridge and seeing the way, like, the art of the game, like, you can Google it and see it. Like, the character select of that game is just like a globe full of dudes, full of characters and action figures and characters from other video games and all these superheroes and all these Street Fighters, and
A world of
robots.
possibilities.
It truly is like a world of possibilities. And like just staring at that lineup and going like, I'm just gonna pick 3 guys and go. And like, to me, that energy made it impossible not to fall in love with. Like, that experience of like, this is just all of the action figures in your box, smash them together for a while. I didn't need a story mode. Like, I knew there wasn't one, and there were ones in other games, but like, I didn't need it because I had 56 people and I could bash them against each other and throw quarters at it. There is such a joy in like staring at a massive lineup of characters and just kind of like building a dream team and building, your lineup and doing all of these things. It's just the coolest to me, it was and remains the coolest experience in the world. Nothing matches the energy of staring at that lineup of characters and imagining the possibilities and watching all of these characters like duke it out. The Bengus art is so captivating.
It is.
And like, in my head, when I imagine these characters, when I think about these characters, when I think about like even like the Marvel characters specifically, because the Street Fighter characters, of course, they're going to look like this. They've been drawn in that kind of Benga style their entire existence. It is the definitive artwork of these Street Fighter characters. But like in my head, it's also the definitive art of these Marvel characters. Like I see in my head Marvel vs. Capcom 2 art when I imagine, when I am reading a story or listening to somebody play a game, and like I'm imagining Captain America, like I am seeing Benga's art, because that art is just like, it captures such a kinetic energy that like infuses so much into the lives of these characters that like it is one of the like it is some of the greatest video game art that has ever been created, in my opinion.
No, it's wonderful art. I find it very nostalgic. I didn't have a Marvel vs. Capcom game in my home, but I saw plenty of Marvel Capcom arcade cabinets. I had friends who had this game at their house. I found the art style very alluring.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't a kid that's like anime style or like Western animation style or things like that. I just thought it was really cool.
It's just great art. It's
evocative art, and seeing like basically comic characters in motion that way, moving like a cartoon on a screen that you control. I just thought that was just a really, really cool thing, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, and like there's such a magic in like, to me, this game acts in a really kind of beautiful like gateway to so many things that I then discovered after this game. I had played Street Fighter 2, but like I didn't connect with Street Fighter 2. Like I didn't connect with Street Fighter 2 in the way that and so like I didn't pay attention to it after that game, like after we rented it for the SNES and then like moved on. After I played Marvel vs. Capcom 2, I went back and went back and discovered the Street Fighter Alpha games and discovered the Street Fighter vs. X-Men games, and like went back and like watched learned about and read about all these characters and storylines, and like I fell in love with that world and the lore and sort of the very odd notes, like the very odd world that these characters had created.
Mm-hmm.
I talked a lot about falling in love with Dan Hibiki, but like, this is how I learned about like the absurd, bizarre story of Guile's best friend Charlie, who gets dropped out of a plane and then survives and then gets abducted by M. Bison and turned into a Frankenstein. That's the coolest thing in the world. And I learned all these things because like I had this giant lineup of characters, and I was just like, I gotta know who this guy is. Like I gotta know who this character is. And I discovered other video games through that. Like you discover Cyberbots. I discovered Cyberbots, the mecha fighting game, because there was Jin had his special move that he would punch you with a mecha fist. And I was like, that's really cool. And then I learned about like a mecha fighting game, and like learning about the history of Capcom video games and all the sort of games in their world and their space, all because they were sort of packed into this little package, and like it inspired me to like learn about different Marvel characters and kind of like fall in love with different stories that I had never experienced. And like it is you gestured towards it, but like it really is, silly phrasing aside, it really is that world of possibility that is presented when you give somebody like, frankly, a box of action figures, and all of them have weird little stories tied to them, and you just kind of like let that person discover all of these weird pieces of lore and history that are buried beneath the surface. And like that to me is a lot of what Marvel vs. Capcom is. Like to me it was like a lot of like looking at somebody and going like, what's this person's deal? Oh, Sansan is like the daughter of a character from a 1984 video game. That's cool. What's this guy's deal? Oh, he's just a cactus man. Great. There's nothing here. Fun.
Yeah. If I created the character Amingo, I should be able to like retire for life off that, because he's just a cool dude. I like him. There doesn't need to be anything. If I drew a picture that good, I'm done. I'm retiring.
Just put him in. Just went. They really were like, has anybody got anything else? I got this. Put him in, brother. Get him in the game.
They had plenty of Capcom stuff to pull from if they wanted to, but like they're just like, that's a cool picture.
This guy. We need this guy right here.
He's one of the worst characters in the game, but he's so cool. He's just dead.
It doesn't matter. Nothing matters. Get him in.
Yeah.
We just need one more guy. We got him.
Yeah. So I think this is a good time to ask this. You mentioned earlier that you got a degree in comic books. Were you captivated by this game because of the Marvel aspect of it? What drew you to it?
I definitely like very much so. And I know where it came from, and it's like it's a silly place. I have loved specifically the characters of Spider-Man, obviously, because Spider-Man's great, and there's a lot of has always been like a very big part of my life from a pop culture and stuff watch. But like I've been captivated by the character of Captain America from basically my entire life.
Yeah.
And that really comes from the fact that there was a 2-part episode of the 1994 Spider-Man animated series
Hell yeah.
where he stumbles out of a portal mid fist fight with the Red Skull. He hangs around Earth for 2 episodes and then fist fights the Red Skull into a different stasis portal where and that's just the last time you see him as a character. He is throwing haymakers. He throws a second set of haymakers and he's gone.
Yep. That is exactly what happens. Yeah.
It's what happens. And it's so funny. And like, I think about that so often of just like, oh, Captain America's here. Cool. Oh, there he goes. Right. Okay.
I'm not made for this world. Get back in the portal.
All right, we're going back in the portal. This Nazi's going back in a portal, guys. I don't know what else to tell you.
Yeah.
I find the character captivating. And it's ultimately because I also find Superman really captivating and is like a centerpiece of my life and like, is a fictional character that genuinely means a world to me, and Captain America is the same vibe. So like I've always been excited by the character of Captain America. And so like him being in the game specifically was a pull towards Marvel vs. Capcom 2. Seeing him on the cover, I immediately was like, oh, okay, this is a game where I get to play Captain America and I'm going to get to like fight Spider-Man and also fight Magneto and also fight the guys from Street Fighter. Cool. They also, and I appreciate this, they do the service of making Captain America in that game extremely cool.
Mm-hmm.
All of his moves in the game are extreme. Like they're pretty basic. They're pretty basic Shotoken's fighting like moves. Like they're not anything particularly flashy, but visually him like doing like a rundown with the shield and doing the throwing the shield, all very sick. And it all like really hits. So like that pulled me into the game specifically. And then like getting to look at all of the other characters of the game and kind of like all these other like superhero characters, like obviously growing up, being 5 years old in 1992 meant that I thought that the X-Men were the coolest thing in the world. And there were all of the X-Men that I liked. And there they were. And Gambit's here and he's throwing cards.
Oh, yeah.
And there's 2 versions of Wolverine specifically because one of them has bone claws.
Yeah.
So like all of those things, like that's really what pulled me towards the game was that like I love superheroes. This was a game where all of these superheroes were present. And like you see it at the arcade with the big Bangus artwork of all your favorite superheroes. Cable is here, and Cable does what I think is the funniest thing that any fighting game character can do, which is just have a gun. It's very funny.
Yeah.
That I'm like, that's Cable. He's the guy who brought a gun to this fight.
Yeah, and Cable is essentially the mascot of Marvel in this version of Marvel vs. Capcom. It's crazy. I mean, like this game came out in 2000, but it is still dripping with 90s like
it has such 90s
everywhere.
Energy.
Yeah. It's really fun. And its character roster and everything and its visual style and everything is like super of its time, but like mechanically, gameplay wise, everything, it all holds up.
It holds up so well. I still, if I see it in an arcade, will like grab a bunch of quarters and like lose myself for half an hour. Can I tell you one of the greatest moments of my life?
Please.
I beat somebody in Marvel vs. Capcom 2 with Dan Hibiki.
Oh, hell yeah.
Because I was playing single player and I always pick my team and Dan Hibiki's always my main guy. And somebody came up to me and put a quarter down. He goes, "You're playing Dan? He's the worst character in the game." And I looked at him and I said, "Then put a quarter down and see what happens." And he put a quarter down and I beat him with Dan. And he stood there for a moment and went quiet and just said, "Man, I lost to Dan. Turns out I'm the guy that sucked." And I watched it settle into his heart that that's what had happened. I've carried that with me for probably a decade.
Wow.
That's life-changing. When you get to be like, yeah, I broke that man's spirit that day. Go home and be a family man.
Jesus Christ. Yeah, no, I mean, it humbles you. I wonder what that person's life is like now.
I think they have to have turned it around. I don't think that I don't think that moment happens without you turning around your life in a pretty significant way.
You either change for the better or you become dramatically worse.
You know what? Either way, it's who you're meant to be. It's really a crucible, I think, is what it is more than anything.
Yeah, it's a major life event. You have to call your job and say, I need new insurance, buddy.
Yeah. It changes you. You don't come out the other side the same person.
That person's either at EVO right now or they are just like probably on like an Amish commune or something somewhere where like they're just completely removed from technology.
They shut it off. They close it out. They say, I can't do it anymore.
Yeah. It's like, what am I doing with my life? The same. But you were playing this game basically when it came out then.
Yeah.
Did you have a home version of the game?
There's a very funny story because yes, for a period. Not when it first came out. When it first came out, we would rent it, on and off from the rental place that wasn't the Blockbuster because they had
like a movie gallery kind of thing.
Yeah. We would rent it from the rental place. In college, we did have a home version of it because my roommate in college had the console version of Marvel vs. Capcom 2, which meant that I logged hundreds of hours of Marvel vs. Capcom 2.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still not good at the game, to be clear, but that was my sit around play video games for 12 hours at a time experience was Marvel vs. Capcom 2 on the I believe it was the Xbox, on the original Xbox.
Yeah.
And then one day, in a moment of betrayal that I've thought about for 20 years, I walked into our shared dormitory and I was like, hey, where's Marvel vs. Capcom 2? I want to play it. My roommate looked me in the eyes and said, oh, I realized that it was selling for like $200 on eBay, so I sold it. And I was like, as an adult, I'm like, sure, get the $200. Like that's the right call, especially because now there are emulators. Now it's on the Switch. The betrayal that I felt in that moment, that my roommate sold a game that, again, was not mine.
Yeah.
I was like, you can't do this to me. And the reason that it was so expensive on eBay is because they stopped printing the game. Like you could not get another copy because that's why it was worth what it was worth, is because they didn't make new copies of Marvel vs. Capcom 2. It was out of print. So he made the correct decision of selling it and getting a good chunk of cash, but it ruined my life. My soul was taken from me.
It's college. This is all I have.
It's like, this is what's keeping me together, man.
Mm-hmm.
This is what's holding me in place.
It's an interesting contrast because I had Jay on for the Guilty Gear episode, and he's talking in this very specific like fighting game language that I'm barely keeping up with. He's getting into the technical nitty gritty, and then like obviously he has this whole like emotional connection to the game too. But it's like for him, it's like this is like a calculated math thing, and for you, it's like I wasn't good at the game, to be clear, but it did keep me alive.
It was a part of my heart and soul, and like then I go and play it, and if you actually know the game pretty much at all, I'm out in like a minute and a half.
Mm-hmm.
I recognize I'm about to get routed. If somebody really starts like playing the game in a serious fashion, I'm like, all right, well, I'm gonna lose in a minute, but like I'm gonna have fun while it happens.
Well, hey, there's only 99 seconds in a match. Yeah. It lasts a minute and a half. I mean, that's 9 seconds left.
I've almost held the entire time.
See, you're not bad.
That's true. I appreciate your perspective here.
Yeah, you got to look at the whole thing, not just what happened.
You gotta look at the bright side.
Yeah, you got to look at the whole sandwich here.
Yeah.
So this is a good time to go into this segment I do every episode where we talk about video games availability, so people who are interested in this game can check it out. No Country for Old Games. Before we talk more about Marvel vs. Capcom 2, we need to talk about how readily available this game is in the current landscape of video games. The subject of video game preservation means a great deal to me because I believe that video games are an art form and they can create experiences that leave impact on the people who play them. In your case, this game is getting you through a very significant part of your life, and it was taken away from you. And maybe that puts you on the path that you are today.
Yeah.
And look, award-winning podcast, everybody.
That's true.
Yeah. So Unfortunately, the impact that games leave on us mean very little to publishers who have historically struggled with keeping their older games available on modern hardware. As time goes on, games that were once readily available become difficult to purchase and acquire. You already talked about the fact that while you were at school, this game was already $200 for the Xbox, which I imagine was still the only Xbox you could buy. It has not gotten cheaper over the years. We're going to rate today's video game on a scale of A to ARG. And ARG is obviously an expression of frustration in how hard it is to acquire a game.
Of course.
It's not me covertly advocating for piracy, which is illegal. ARG
It's illegal and you shouldn't do it. But we should rate it on a scale from 1 to ARG.
Yeah, ARG is what Ruby Heart says.
Yeah.
Yeah, the pirate lady. So, let's talk about availability. Marvel vs. Capcom originally released in Japan on March 23rd, 2000 on the Sega Naomi arcade platform. The Dreamcast version released in Japan on March 30th, 7 days after it was released for arcades. The Dreamcast version came to the US on June 29, 2000 and in Europe on July 16th. When you see Marvel vs. Capcom on Metacritic, they're usually talking about the Dreamcast version as the definitive home version to play it because it's the one that most closely resembles the arcade cabinet, visually, everything like that. PS2 and Xbox ports also came out. These versions had a more limited print run, as you said, because Capcom would lose the Marvel license shortly thereafter. These were released in 2002 and 2003. And that was the only way you could play Marvel vs. Capcom for a period of time. And if you did not get the limited prints of these PS2 or Xbox games, or if you were one of the several people who owned a Dreamcast, you were SOL if you wanted to play this thing in the comfort of your own home without sailing the high seas on a.
It's funny you say that because I did. So I didn't necessarily. It wasn't necessarily that I had Marvel vs. Capcom 2 in its pure state, but you better believe that I had in college MUGEN, which is the fighting game engine game that you build your own fighting game with. I had a retrofitted Marvel vs. Capcom 2 made up of people having pulled the sprites out of the game, loaded them into MUGEN. It's probably how I fried at least one computer with viruses, if I'm being 100% honest. But I for sure had a version of the game that I played on my computer.
Oh, yeah. Look, you had the Freedom Force version of Marvel vs. Capcom.
Exactly what it was.
You literally had Marvel vs. Capcom 2 at home, and it was MUGEN.
It was me building it in MUGEN, running my computer's DOS emulator so that I could open up MUGEN, and then building Marvel vs. Capcom 2 in it, and then loading viruses into my computer, and then my computer dying.
It's Ryu versus virus.
It truly was.
Yeah. So because of the limited availability, you were forced to destroy technology in your insatiable lust to continue playing this game. Eventually, they did release Xbox Live Arcade in a PlayStation 3 version of Marvel vs. Capcom 2. This was released in 2009 after the success of the HD re-release of Street Fighter 2 Turbo. Backbone Entertainment, which developed Turbo, would come back to develop Marvel vs. Capcom 2. This is very important because, again, licenses are a big reason for why a lot of games fall out of circulation or why a lot of games just fall through the cracks of availability. This is something that I talked about at length in the X-Men Origins Wolverine episode and in the bonus episode that I did exclusively for Patreon about the Marvel license with Activision. But in Capcom, they also had that license too, and that's this murky thing about availability in this space, especially now that Disney owns Marvel. This thing has only been more and more difficult to do. But in 2009, there was no Disney Marvel. It was simply Marvel as its own company. Probably easy to broker a deal for this thing. They were able to re-release the Marvel vs. Capcom 2 on Xbox Live Arcade and PlayStation 3 digitally, and ultimately go on to make, I think 2011 was when Marvel vs. Capcom 3 came out.
I think so. Yeah.
We'll come back to that. The Xbox Live Arcade PS3 versions had the Dreamcast version's code base and features online multiplayer, widescreen support, filtering options for character sprites labeled smooth, crisp, and classic were also added, and custom soundtrack support was added, as well as a free downloadable hip-hop mixtape to serve as an alternative soundtrack for the game. If you're a coward who doesn't like jazz, but we'll come back to that. Mobile version was ported to the Apple App Store on April 25th, 2012, and then it was delisted from digital storefronts at the end of 2013 as Capcom's licensing contracts with Marvel Comics expired yet again. And 2013 was firmly in the period of time when Disney had Marvel. And this was also around the time when Activision Marvel games were also being delisted from stores. So follow the pattern.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you and I have been talking about doing an episode on Marvel vs. Capcom 2 since June of last year.
That's true.
And part of the reason why it took us a while to get together to record this episode is because later that same month, Capcom announced the Marvel vs. Capcom Fighting Collection Arcade Classics. Cumbersome title, but significant. We both thought it would be best to wait for the collection to come out before we talked about the game because video game preservation availability is a huge component of this podcast and the show. And this collection was released digitally on September 12th for Nintendo Switch, PS4, and Windows, September 12th, 2024. Physical versions of the collection were made available on November 22nd that same year. And an Xbox One version has been released on February 4th, 2025, just 2 weeks ago as of the time of this recording. Big time, because again, hard to secure deals for all this stuff.
Yeah.
These are characters that are firmly Disney characters now. This could be called Disney versus Capcom if you wanted to do so. Sorry.
No. I got so wrapped up in thinking about a Kingdom Hearts fighting game that like I just went to a different planet for a minute.
It's a miracle that Kingdom Hearts is still a thing.
It really, really is though.
Yeah. But again, a conversation for another day. So this collection includes not just the arcade versions of Marvel vs. Capcom 1 and 2, but also X-Men Children of the Atom, which was the first fighting game that Capcom developed for Marvel. There's Marvel Superheroes, X-Men vs. Street Fighter, Marvel Superheroes vs. Street Fighter, and the 1993 Punisher beat-em-up game, which was the first Capcom-developed Marvel game, End of Sentence. This is the first time that arcade version was ever ported to consoles, and I would think it was the first time a couple of these arcade versions had ever made it to consoles as well.
The Punisher game is so weird.
It's a very fucking weird game.
It's a weird game, especially because, like, you think about all of the Marvel characters that you're like, yeah, sure. The characters that I would famously think about fighting, hand to hand without the use of weapons or guns. I think the Punisher.
My best friend and roommate Avery, the person I did 2 Marvel episodes on, the person who did the art for the show, the person who just like thinks about these things all the time. I was playing the 1993 Punisher game because like, why not? I already have the game anyway. Yeah. Let's do it. He was the one who got me the game for Christmas because he knew how important it was to have this game physically. It was a really good gift. I was playing the Punisher game and I turned to him because he didn't know the answer. I turned to him and said, "Who do you think player 2 is in a Punisher fighting game?" And he thought for a second and he said, "It's got to be Daredevil, right?" And I said, "No, it's Nick Fury."
It's Nick Fury, but notably like not in his shield gear. It's Nick Fury just dressed like a guy.
Yeah.
He's like Nick Fury in the comics has like a very iconic outfit, like a very iconic like uniform and color scheme, and like wears like a blue leather like jumpsuit. In this, he is fully dressed just like in a shirt and jeans, and it's very confusing.
It's like, I'm off the clock. I can start killing people.
I can start beating people up in the streets of New York City with my buddy, the Punisher.
It's like they just dropped all pretense, and that's just Snake Plissken from Escape from New York.
It really has that. And like, it's not really like, I don't think it's really explained in the plot of the game, like as thin as it is, like why the head of a multinational paramilitary organization is like, should probably go kick the shit out of these guys with this one vigilante.
Yeah, it's just like we needed a player 2 that would have a similar move set to the Punisher, and it's like who's another guy with
who else uses guns?
Who else is just the guy who punches and shoots people? Fucking Nick Fury, I guess.
Yeah, probably, sure.
Yeah, the Punisher game, everybody. But all this to say is that this collection, which again, cumbersomely titled Marvel vs. Capcom Fighting Collection: Arcade Classics, is a wonderful piece of archival work. In addition to preserving these games as they would play in arcades, each game includes online support, casual multiplayer modes, rollback netcode, which I went into detail about how significant that is in the Guilty Gear episode. It creates the smoothest online experience for fighting games, concealing spikes and lag or other online internet connection-based issues. This creates an experience that comes as close to replicating an offline experience as possible. It's also a miracle that this was possible because retrofitting existing games with rollback netcode is harder than incorporating it during development. This collection also includes a spectator mode to watch matches as well as a training mode. Quick saving was also included, though it should be noted you only get one quick save for the entire collection. A museum mode with concept and key art and cabinet art and development documents, and an in-game music player with complete soundtracks for each game is also included in this collection. Important, huge deal, especially since we just talked up Angus's art earlier. And accessibility features like modifying the controls and reducing screen flashing are also included. I would say this is an A for availability. A game that was just gone twice.
Fully in my adult life, like this was just like you had to go to an arcade.
Yeah.
That was where Marvel vs. Capcom 2 lives. And now that's not the case anymore. This is kind of the ideal scenario for like games preservation and games this game is now just available for anyone to have it.
Yeah, it's on Xbox One and PS4, which is, PS5 and the current series of Xbox can play. It's on the Switch, great.
Mm-hmm.
And it's on PC. You can download this game on Steam. That's best case scenario in this current ecosystem that you can play this on basically the main 4 ways. And like I said earlier, like from 2003 to 2009, fuck you, you can't play this game. You can't buy a copy of it, hundreds of dollars. Buy, gone, go to the arcade, loser. And then 2009 to 2013, it's like, you can download this on any Xbox 360, PlayStation 3. It won't even take up that much space. Have fun, everybody. And then again, gone for a full decade.
A decade of just not available.
And it's like the only Marvel vs. Capcom game newly released was Infinite, which is infamous for a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
That was the Disney guided one.
Mm-hmm.
So this is huge. This is just huge.
It's a tremendous, I screamed when they announced it because I was like, this is the game that I love and it's going to be available again.
Yeah. We manifested its existence by talking about it a few days before it was announced.
we truly were like, we should talk about Marvel vs. Capcom. And then they were like, hey, we got word. They're doing it for the podcast. We gotta make it right.
Yeah. People fear the ARG.
They fear the ARG.
They fear the ARG. Yeah, so A, with the main caveat being how in Europe, Middle East, and Africa, the physical Switch release of this game does not include a game card. It is just the box with a download code for the digital version. I find that very annoying.
That's very annoying.
It is just the appearance of physical media for collection purposes. Give me the card, guys. I think that's annoying. Otherwise, though, this is an exceptional re-release that should be considered the standard of the industry.
Agreed.
Of course, with the specter of capitalism looming over all of us, it is only a matter of time before the licensing agreement between Disney and Capcom expires, making this game unavailable again. So if we truly want these games to be preserved indefinitely, we need to look further than the market and look toward true archival for the long term. But for now, you are free to pay money to buy this game on the current line of consoles.
And that's great. I'll take it.
Yeah. Do you have the collection?
I have not bought it yet, but it's on my list. I truly... when we were like getting ready to record and like locking down a day, I was like, shoot, I never bought that, did I? And so like, I'm going to make, it might be this weekend.
Yeah. You have to tell me how you feel about it after the fact. But I got it. It was a great Christmas present from Avery and it was like perfect. It's like, great. I want to record this. Fighting Game February is real and it's happening. And it's a really wonderful collection. Like the art and the music and everything, the museum stuff is just very, very important to me that they include all that. My only reservation about this port is that since they're all based on the arcade version, there isn't a way to do exhibition matches between a computer.
Oh, interesting. Sure.
Right. They have like a separate mode you can enter so you can do the training mode that would appear on the console versions.
That makes sense.
It's not built off of the Dreamcast code like the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 versions were.
Sure.
There's only the standard arcade mode where the CPU selects their own characters and you do the gauntlet all the way to the Abyss boss battle at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, this version's like why would you play a fighting game without friends anyway, Bucko? Just player 2 can put in a coin and join in at any time, and then the online availability is there too. But beyond the training mode, there's no way for you to like hone your skills by yourself.
Right.
With just like CPU like matchups that you can make for yourself. You're just at the mercy of like the system basically. But hey, it's the true authentic arcade version that you can play in your home.
And that's pretty amazing. Like it's gonna pay for itself eventually.
Yeah, no, it's been a mainstay in fighting game tournaments since people were able to play it on consoles. It is considered by many to be one of, if not the best fighting game of all time. We are talking about it on this episode for a reason. The Sega Dreamcast release holds a 90 out of 100 on review aggregation website Metacritic. The Switch, PC, and PS4 versions of the Marvel vs. Capcom Fighting Collection currently hold an 86 out of 100. But we're not here to reduce the legacy of this game to a series of numbers. We're here to discuss what this game actually means to someone who played it. So let's get into that, Jeff.
Hey, Riley.
Yeah, Andrew?
Do you want to make a podcast ad?
I do, but what would we mention?
So I think that we could probably put together an ad for a show called The Podcast Minds. There, but for the grace of pod, go we. You know, it's a podcast where we both pitch each other podcast ideas instead of doing one ourselves.
Yeah, it's a podcast pilot pitching project. Totally. We should mention that it's a comedy show, right? Where we throw out ideas like getting weirdly deep into the themes of Jumanji.
Is that one a podcast?
No. It's a podcast idea that is actually a front for me to talk to you about hyperfixations I got.
Oh, that's most of the things that you hit me with. What about instead if we just talked about all the different ways you could do a rewatch of Lost?
Now, that sounds like you just did what I did, but you said it in a positive voice.
Okay, and along the way, what if we pitched ideas like, I don't know, Epic Rap Battles of Mystery, the Lin-Manuel Miranda podcast?
Listen to the Podcast Minds. There, but for the grace of pod, go we on your podcatcher of choice on the Moonshot Network. Hi-ho!
Hi-ho! Every Friday.
What do you like about this game that you wish more video games would do?
I've said it a few times, and I'm going to say it again. There are 56 characters in this game.
Mm-hmm.
I know there are a lot of people, there are a lot of fighting game fans that like balk at large roster games because like, you know, it is impossible not to make that many characters and not end up making like tiers of effective characters, which means you have functionally made like a smaller roster with a bunch of chaff decisions. I think that take is bad and wrong, and you should feel bad because I like having the most action figures in my toy box that I can have.
Sure. Really, like a quick comparison, like people love chocolate chip cookies, and the giant cookie may not be as like dense with flavor as like a standard sized chocolate chip cookie, but god fucking damn if a cookie cake isn't delicious.
If every time you put a cookie cake in front of me, I don't feel like it's the greatest day of my life. I'm just like, I am such a, and it comes back to this game specifically. It comes back to looking at that globe and seeing all of the different characters. I am such a sucker for when a game offers me an astounding number of characters.
Yeah. The Tenkaichi Budokai games. We talked about those earlier.
Smash Ultimate, I don't play all of those. Like, I have the characters that I play.
Mm-hmm.
But when I load up the computer or when I sit down with friends and they bust out some character that I have forgotten is in the game, the excitement that I feel in my heart is extraordinary. To me, the visceral pleasure of like a fighting game is the experience of like seeing somebody pull out a character and going like, oh, I'm going to get to watch this character fight, and then seeing them play like fight. For me, just having more characters and having more possibilities and having like more toys to play with is, and also like the other thing I will point to, you gestured towards it, but like I like, and I think it speaks to the games. I think the game's enduring legacy speaks to the fact that I'm not the only person that likes this. I like that it's there's a clear, deep strategy to the game. Like there's a way to like understand the game and like get really into it, but they've also made it very easy if you just want to do cool shit to do the cool shit.
Right.
All I have to do is hit 2 or 3 buttons and all of my fighters will get together and do a gigantic flashing screen explosion attack. And there's skill that goes into understanding when best to do that and which characters pair best with each other and how to build that special attack into the most effective form possible. But when it comes down to it, I have to push 2 buttons. It adds a joy to me as somebody that I've said like struggles with like complicated things in video games to just get to kind of like push 2 buttons and then like it gets me focus on the other intangible pieces rather than focusing on like I have to make my hands do a specific set of gestures. That experience is so wonderful. It makes me feel like included, and it makes me feel like the game like is meeting me where I'm at, and like all of those things mean so much to me but also just like, give me a funky little guy who is a cactus man. Give me a guy who is a giant robot pilot. The joy of fighting games in particular to me is the experience of playing Street Fighter for the first time and like seeing the formula of here are 7 guys with markedly different fighting styles. Here are 7 fighters from across the world. Here's the Russian bear wrestler and the Spanish cage fighter, and going like, oh, I don't know how these two are gonna fight, like how this fight's even gonna look. Like that kind of like fantasy blood sport combat experience is to me the heart of like what makes me excited to watch fighting games and to play fighting games. And so like I will always argue for just give me as many weird and cool oddball characters that I can possibly interact with so that I can constantly have the experience of going, "Oh, this guy, cool. I can't wait to see what they're going to do in the ring." It comes back to my love of wrestling and superheroes and games of all kinds where I just get to see a character and get excited by the possibilities and then imagine like what the fight between that character and another character is going to look like.
Right. Or to put it simply like you did earlier, no Dan, no buy.
No Dan, no buy. No Dan, no sale. Like it is
Yeah.
if you I want some characters that are weird loser little freaks.
Yeah, no, like what you said was wonderful. Like the idea of like a roster inspiring the imagination.
Mhm.
Like that's a very important component of the thing. It's not about like picking the coolest things, especially in a crossover fighting game. Like it's this thing where it's like, oh, I don't want to have like the most obvious picks. Just be there. That's like middle of the road, whatever,
Yeah.
right? I want to see like what the developers really like. I don't want some corporate mandates this to be synergistic with this. I want to see like these nerds are flexing on other nerds by putting fucking Shuma Garath as a playable fighting game character.
That's what I want. I want the characters that you can feel. Like I don't have very fond opinions about Marvel vs. Capcom Ultimate. You gestured
Infinite,
towards it.
yeah.
Or Infinite. I don't have fond feelings towards that game. It came out at a point where I played it and then was like, okay, it's not hitting the same as Marvel vs. Capcom 2. So, but like the one area that like I do treasure about that game is it's not even the act of playing it. It was really the act of before the game came out, they released a series of blogs where the developers, and it's exactly what you're saying. The developers went character by character and explained the logic behind every alternate costume of every character in the game. And that was to me where I felt the most joy because they were like, here's all of our alternate Iron Mans. All of our alternate Iron Mans are different versions of his armor that he's worn in the comics at different points in the history. So like, here's our Iron Man, here's our, golden Iron Man, here's like, and they pointed out, and it's really just like palette swaps, but like, the ability that they were like, we sat down and we said every alternate thing has to have comic book lore behind it or video game lore behind it. It's our way of like hiding other characters in the game is by making Ryu and Ken's outfits specific colors. Like that is the one area of Infinite where I really sat down and I was like, oh yeah, they're having fun. This is where they're having fun, is like researching and deciding what characters the skins should be. Like that's joyful, and that's the joy that I want to feel through the entire game, is the developers just like digging through a stack of comic books and old video games and going like, what if we just threw this into the mix? This is fun.
Yeah, in true Jeff Stormer fashion, you like the manual more than you like the game.
I did like the manual more than like the game. You're absolutely correct.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, what a game to prefer the manual to anyway,
Yeah.
right? Because like the personal touch, that's the X factor, no pun intended. It's the enthusiasm that you can feel. There's like things that exist because like it's going to make money, and then there are things that exist because yeah, we got to make money, but let's put our feelings about this stuff into this and like have people meet us at where we are. And as a result, like it is also like a thing that's being informed by the culture of the 90s and comic culture of the 90s too, which is why it's so X-Men forward.
Mm-hmm.
And specifically characters like Gambit, who is, okay, I like Gambit. I am Cajun. I like that there is a Cajun superhero.
Sure.
Everything about him is conceptually stupid as fuck, and also the coolest shit I've ever seen.
You have identified the paradox at the heart of Gambit. Yes,
I was a kid who was like finding like Gambit solo runs and reading them, even though like his character is like not particularly well fleshed out or anything. But he has, again, the thing that people are saying a lot lately. He's got aura, and
it's Gambit as a character is so interesting because like he is intentionally designed to make you immediately think he's the coolest character that has ever existed.
Trench coat with a purple suit underneath it and a jockstrap on his face.
And like the goal was always to make you immediately go like, okay, this character rips, so that when they made him a villain immediately, you felt a betrayal about a character you didn't know for very long. But it worked too well. And people were like, this guy's the coolest forever. And if he ever betrays me, I will burn a building down. And they were like, yeah, I guess this guy's just our guy forever. Like, we can't turn this guy villainous because we made him too cool.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. Like, again, I fucking love Gambit. Cage's representation, his fucking stupid accent is so cool. And like he talks in first person. Why Gambit do that? Why Gambit talk like he never from the...
There's in the X-Men 92 comics that they did like a follow-up series of comics, I think in like 2013, 2014-ish. There's a single panel where Gambit is explaining like a romantic heartbreak moment where he has left someone and she's like in bed and he snuck out in the night and he left a letter that says, "It not you, it Gambit." And then it's just signed G. My wife and I just say to each other all the time, "It not you, it Gambit."
Gambit bad.
Gambit bad.
Gambit sorry.
Gambit sorry. You know, the Thieves Guild. It really traumatized Gambit.
Gambit never learned to process emotions or talk in third person.
They didn't teach that in the Thieves Guild.
Gambit need proper therapy and speech therapy.
I fucking love Gambit.
Fucking love Gambit. In X-Men 97, it's been Gambit stock all the way up. Everyone's on my level now. You fuckers who made fun of him, you posers, you didn't stick with him after you saw him in like the 90s cartoon and is like, well, he's me, I guess, and there's not a lot of me's out there. So yeah.
He loves making beignets.
Yeah. He's my Gambit jambalaya. Best in the country, I'll tell you what.
Oh, oof, what's this here you're cooking?
It's called food, Gambit. Normal Christmas food.
This need a little Gambit magic. Little cayenne, little thyme.
If you want to keep that hand, stay away.
Gambit just trying to help.
Oh, what a care. Yeah, it's a very 90s lineup in the game. But like I think that adds to the charm of it because like it's very specific.
Yeah, the great character roster that is of the times, but also just very like, yeah, we're comic nerds too. That's why we put these characters in here. Like, yeah, it has like, yeah, Venom is a 90s ass character to put in there.
Omega Red.
Steel Samurai. What?
Silver Samurai?
I always say Steel Samurai. Silver Samurai.
Spiral from the Mojo-verse.
Yeah, Spiral.
Marrow from the Age of Apocalypse.
Yeah, Marrow. Fun roster. There's just
fun
like this
roster.
Fun
very
roster.
Of its time roster, but like with a lot of glee in it. Glee is the word that I would really like. It's a very like gleeful roster of just pulling in, kind of taking the philosophy of like, who can we grab? Who do we have ready?
Yeah. Like, it's interesting, like, you know, Marvel vs. Capcom 3 is like Capcom representation's a lot more like, let's pull from our non-fighting game stuff. So it's interesting in Marvel vs. Capcom 2, where you have like, okay, let's pull our fighting game rosters. And even then, it's not the most obvious picks. Like, Dalsim.
Not an immediate pick. And like, it's including Jin Saotome is like a big thing for me because like you're saying, it's pulling from fighting games, but it's really looking at it sideways and going like, this is a fighting game. Like this game, the game that I'm in is a fighting game. Like, you know, I am a mech pilot, but like, this is a fighting game. It is not a fighting game that is like logistically or like in terms of scale compatible with Marvel, with the rest of what we're doing at all, as evidenced by the fact that his mecha thing is like a super move.
Yeah.
But like, they're still like, this is a fighting game character. He fits the vibe. He's here. And you kind of, and it invites that question of like, what would happen if we brought in the guys from the mecha fighting game?
Yeah. It's like when Super Smash Brothers comes out, like people who have never played F-Zero before would have a completely different idea of what those games are about because Captain Falcon is a character in them, and Captain Falcon doesn't get out of his vehicle in the
certainly
F-Zero
doesn't
games.
throw a flaming giant punch.
Yeah, that's just something the game's invented that's now like part of
Core
his
to
lore
his
now.
being.
Yeah. More people have seen a Falcon punch than have ever played an F-Zero game.
That's
It's just-
true. That's
yeah.
100% true. And I love that.
Yeah. I'm sure F-Zero fans hate it, but
I'm sure that they do.
so we're talking about all these wonderful characters. Everybody's here. Who are your Marvel vs. Capcom 2 mains? Who are your faves?
I usually main Dan Hibiki because
Mhm.
I've learned how to play Dan Hibiki to a point where I can actually win with him. So that's like my go-to, like that's my Shoto. That's my I've locked in. I'm getting up close and I'm fighting. Usually I will pair that with like Marvel characters. Usually it's like an Iron Man Hulk combo. Because I like having both a long range distance fighter, so I'll either go with Cable or Iron Man, and then I like having a tank for when I need it, and I can sub in Hulk. And also with that combo, you can set up a really nice scenario where Hulk does his crashing down move, where he brings a chunk of building down, which pins a person down, which allows Iron Man's beam cannon to shoot across, while Dan Hibiki gets up close and does his close-up attack. There's a very good synergy of specials there that really you can knock somebody out pretty easily if you can build your meter up.
Yeah. For me, intuitively, I just lean I feel like I need 3 different body types to get a well-rounded team here.
That's where I'm at.
So it's let's pick an angular guy, let's pick a buff person, and then let's pick a big boy. You know what I mean?
Sometimes I will sub out Dan Hibiki for Captain America just for maximum maximum thematics of a good solid Avengers team. For that exact reason.
I love, Strider Hiryu and
Strider's
Spider-Man, and you better believe I'm picking Gambit.
I know you're picking Gambit.
Gambit, love Gambit. But I can't pick all 3 of them at the same time because those are all angular boys.
Yeah, right.
I will pick, I love Cable. Cable rules. So I'll throw a Cable in there. And then I also get the paranoid thing where it's oh man, all the Marvel characters. I don't want to just have an all Marvel team. But it's or even you just end up with an all X-Men team on accident. Because it's I was thinking oh man, I like Cyclops a lot too. Dr. Doom's really cool. So I think so it's I Strider, there, Capcom representation. I just like to play around a lot. I like Strider because it feels like I'm playing Spider-Man but with a sword.
Yeah. He's got a good energy. I do love Magneto and Dr. Doom a lot with that kind of lean back and just sort of throw big lightning balls is great. It's really there's a joy there.
I like that Dr. Doom is as big as Thanos.
I do love that. I love
Possibly
that a
larger.
Lot. I love that he's a big and he's cumbersome. He's not very fast, which really captures the feel of this is a guy in medieval armor for some reason.
Yeah. It's this thing where it's I imagine the Bangus version of Dr. Doom being on that ship that made the Fantastic Four, and he's 9 feet tall and 4 feet wide, and that's how he was before.
Yeah,
it's wild. These hulking proportions for Dr. Doom. It's great. I love the exaggerated things because then you look at Gambit, and Gambit's basically just a series of triangles.
He's so tiny and they really. We talked about the iconic Bengus art, but the fact that Wolverine is truly just a tiny little ball.
No, these are some of my favorite artistic renderings of a lot of these Marvel characters. This is how my favorite Rogue look.
It's a great Rogue look. Now I've pulled up the Google and I'm just the fact that they make both the fact that Cyclops and Cable's outfits don't look stupid in this is nothing less than an achievement.
Right, because Cable looks like he's wearing suspenders on a level.
Yeah.
But he looks so cool.
It'd be the fact that Bengus makes it so that they pull off these outfits. It's no small feat.
Everyone looks comfortable in their skin, and it's because the artist felt very confident drawing all that. It really works. I can't believe Blackheart is in this. I don't know who Blackheart is.
Blackheart is one of the other devils, is one of the other lords of hell from Doctor Strange. Like Blackheart is not Mephisto. Blackheart's just one of the other guys.
It's so wild, so wild, so wild. At the same time, like I've never played the Darkstalkers games before. Like my relationship with all those characters are purely through Marvel vs. Capcom 2. It's just like I'm just really glad at how like diverse the selection of characters is on both sides.
And like that's another thing that it introduced me to is like Darkstalkers, and like then you discover Darkstalkers, and Darkstalkers rules. They hide the best thing about Darkstalkers. They don't include it in this because they know they want you to go to Darkstalkers and then discover that there's a Sasquatch.
I didn't know.
There's Darkstalkers, one of the characters is just a Sasquatch. It's full on all of the Universal movie monsters are all in here, and it rules.
Sorry, let's pick the Darkstalkers characters that probably won't get us into copyright trouble for Marvel vs. Capcom.
Yeah, they didn't pick the Frankenstein, they didn't pick the Dracula, they didn't pick the Sasquatch. Like the thing I would say about their relationship to Darkstalkers is that they showed restraint, which when you see the characters that they went with says a lot about Darkstalkers.
Yeah, no, I just remember like seeing Morgan for the first time, and it's like, man, I really hope an adult doesn't walk past me while I'm doing this.
Yeah.
Look, buddy, I didn't pick the design.
Look, this is just how it is in the game. There's nothing I can do about it.
Yeah. Look, Zangief, he's buff and naked too. It's
yeah.
Is this equal? Not really, but
no, but you know what?
Yeah, like this is a problem I have with like the new Marvel Rivals game. I'm playing the shit out of that game right now.
Sure.
But the thing is, like, I feel so embarrassed to play it. Like when my girlfriend's hanging out, we're both like, she's playing her Stardew Valley, and then I'm playing a game on the PlayStation. I just feel embarrassed because like all these women characters are designed with like these like BBL bodies, and then the men are just the most flat-assed men in the world, not particularly attractive. And it's like, look, Bengus drew all of these Marvel vs. Capcom 2 characters like he wanted to fuck them.
They are all sexy. Like all of them are sexy, and like you can at least acknowledge that like he drew like Spider-Man is hot in this game, and like that is worth acknowledging.
His official art pose is like that is a pinup model shot. I don't know
what really truly is.
Like I don't know what his references were, but it wasn't a Safe for Work magazine, I'll tell you.
No.
That's what I'm asking for from Rivals. If you're going to do that in one way, you have to do it in all ways. Please. This game did it in 2000.
Yeah.
And mind you, I'm not saying that they were like feminists or anything over there, but at least like the men are also sexy.
At least everybody was hot, and that's not nothing.
Yeah. Besides Roll, obviously.
Sure.
Yeah. Child. And speaking of Roll, I am looking at the tier list now for Marvel vs. Capcom 2, the one on Super Combo specifically. There is a dedicated tier at the very bottom, below F tier, called Roll tier. This is a character that is so bad. Like F tier characters, incidentally, all Capcom characters as well. It's a Mingo, Chun-Li. Oh wait, Shumagarath. That's a Marvel character. But then it's Dan Hibiki, and then the Serve Bot. Underneath that F tier of characters, there is a worse character. Roll from Mega Man. Mega Man's sister Roll. Definitively considered the worst character of the game, unanimously.
Very funny.
Yeah. Justin Wong, known for being the Marvel vs. Capcom 2 player, having won 7 EVO titles for the game, tried to make Roll viable, and the only way that was possible for him was by abusing Dr. Doom as a grab assist. Like Roll is a terrible character, and you shouldn't pick him. But the fact that she is included in the game is part of what makes this game great.
And she's a secret character. Like you have to, you can unlock Roll. Like it's so funny, or at least I think she is. It might have been Marvel vs. Capcom 1, but either way, like at least at one point they made Roll a secret character, and Roll is so bad that to put that character as a secret character is one of the funniest things that's ever happened in video games.
She's so bad, her sprite doesn't even look like it fits in with the rest of the game.
No. It's so bad.
Like they did pull like assets from other video games to make this game possible, but I don't think there's a Mega Man fighting game that I'm aware of that they were pulling this sprite from.
I don't think so.
This is just like this character sucks, we're not even going to draw her properly.
Oh, it's so great.
Man, like Amingo, great design, also an F tier. Dan Hibiki, your boy. And then next to that, a Serve Bot, which is again like one... Tron Bonne uses Serve Bots as part of her attacks, and that's just its own dedicated character.
Yeah.
What a game. You see, this is every video game to me. It needs trash characters.
That's part of what makes the joy of it, because then you get to play them and sometimes win with them, and that's the best part of the game.
I see the reason why you want to make these things like super precise Swiss watch video games that you're thinking and factoring in like every single aspect of it. But like to me, like that extra little bit that makes a game special and enduring is having a lot of fun with it. Like knowing this character is not good. We're not doing this for commercial appeal or anything like that. We're doing it because we thought it would be funny, and we're sharing that with you.
And that's the joy. That to me, that's the joy to me. Is like we've made a character. We've made this. Some of these characters will be bad. That's okay. That's okay. We are okay with that, because that's part of where the joy of the game is that these characters. Sometimes you have to look at a character and go, all right, I'm gonna play this. I'm gonna play the dog shit character for a while.
It's like a conversation you can have with somebody in there. Like it's a thing that you can use to mess with somebody who is at a lower skill level than you. Like your story, that like your life-changing story for a person where you beat them with Dan Hibiki.
It's great.
We need this for the culture.
You need it for the culture.
Yeah. Is there anything about this game that you wish it did better?
I mean, I am such a sucker for story modes that I do wish this game like had a story mode that I could get wrapped up in. I think that's especially true when we're when considering the fact that they introduced like new characters. I would have I would like to know what's going on with Ruby Rose and like what's going on with Sansan Jr. I'm leaving Amingo off of that. I don't want to know what's going on with Amingo. He's perfect as is. No changes.
I don't need him to go through anything. Let him chill.
Let him chill. He's fine. You're good.
Ruby Hart is technically the main character of this game.
And like doesn't do like that's the thing, and like because like I'm like this is in some ways like a big crossover team 'em up. It does feel like a waste of slots to like put in original characters but then not do anything with them.
Mm-hmm.
That's always been the low point. I'm always like, yeah, but like they're not in any other games and they don't actually do anything in the game that they're in.
Yeah, because like ostensibly she's the character that brings everybody together. Like, hey, everybody get on my ship. We're going to go beat the shit out of the final boss. And like, here's the thing. There's no story mode. The final boss is just 3 really cool pictures.
Yeah.
Ruby Hart is just a really cool picture. I don't think they ever did anything with Ruby Hart ever again.
And that's the thing I would like to see done better. Is like if you're going to introduce an original character into this game, like they should have then I think that you have the obligation to make a story mode that like justifies the existence of this character, as opposed to throwing in, I don't know, Nick Fury from the 1993 Punisher game, or if it has to be, or like Cyborg Commando from Cyborg Commando, which I think is a Capcom game. You know, throw somebody else in the mix.
Yeah. Like I'm looking at the Capcom database wiki to see if they ever did anything with Ruby Hart ever again. And it's kind of like, in Street Fighter V, one of the characters has a Ruby Hart outfit as an alternate costume. There's a story where it's like, they tried to make a game and it didn't work. And then, one of them is like, according to these developers, Ruby Hart was originally a rejected concept character for Darkstalkers. But it's just like
that tracks.
This design just has like so much personality to it. I really wish that this was something other than like being in the background on the Days of Future Past stage in Marvel vs. Capcom 3.
Yeah, and that's it. My view is either like give that character something to do, or throw in another Capcom character that I can get excited is showing up here.
Yeah, I was looking online to like read what people thought about the game at the time. I was looking at like old game FAQ forum discussions. I was looking at old reviews, a lot of internet comments, and quite a few reviews shitting on the jazz-inspired soundtrack of this game. Where do you stand on that?
I mean, I guess people are wrong. I don't know. Like, people are allowed to be as wrong as they can conceivably be, because the jazz soundtrack in this game is the fucking highest art that you can possibly comprehend. The jazz soundtrack is what I like. That's what it's all. Walking into an arcade and hearing, I want to take you for a ride, and like getting to like that like that just it gets me so pumped. It is all like. The whole like I mean, I also just love horns, but like that horn, the hit of that horn is just I'm mystified at people hating on the jazz sound, because it's iconic. Like it is it isn't like other, like they didn't go for the easy adaptations of other things. They gave it a sonic identity that is all its own, and that is amazing, and I love it.
Right. They could have taken the easy route, but they did something that they wanted to do instead. And there's just a bunch of comments you'll read where it's like, I don't like it. Like, the jazz is ridiculous. It doesn't fit this tone at all. And it's like, oh, jazz, the improvisational, playful, that doesn't fit fighting games?
There is nothing in the game beyond where we're throwing toys into the toy box and smashing them together. Like, it's fun, it's light, it's easy. It is it actually sounds nice when you're playing it. Like it doesn't drone. I love the music very, very much.
Yeah, I think the music's quite good. I was surprised at how, like, because it's like maybe like 30-ish minutes of music in the entire game. I was surprised at how small the soundtrack was, but like I obviously wasn't expecting 56 unique character themes or anything like that. But
yeah,
considering like how many assets and things are reused, I would figure like maybe they were just going to like grandfather in some of the old music too. But no, they just like, each stage has its own music. They have like the take you for a ride. They were like, yep, call it a day, send it.
They hit it. They hit it. It worked. And they said ship it out.
It's funny they just did like maximalism on one level, and then they're like, actually, brevity is the soul of wit when it came to the music. But priorities, right?
Priorities.
If it's like you can get away with a lot reusing a lot of things, and it's good that like this music is singular to this particular game to give it its own distinctive identity while reusing so much.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like the soundtrack. Gamers are babies. Gamers have always been babies.
Gamers are wrong. Gamers are wrong. Gamers are, as they often are, wrong.
Now you must acquire a taste for freeform jazz. Okay, SpongeBob, you ready?
It's relieving in a way to see that people really have not changed since the internet has started. It's just things have gotten louder, but it's also like, man, it's always been babies. It's always been babies being loud on the internet.
It's always been babies.
If you can't handle jazz, what can you handle? It's not even one of the more listen to music besides video game music. It's great.
Challenge level impossible.
Yeah. But no, and other things I wish this game did better. I don't know. I think it's I'm going to say like precise considering the size of the roster or anything like that. But I do think it's just like a lot of people having a blast making this game. It doesn't feel like it's desperate.
It does what it sets out to do very well.
It feels like they were almost anticipating this being the last one, because I know like this is probably like they knew and were aware that the contract wasn't going to last indefinitely with Marvel. And it does feel like, well, if this might be the last one,
let's pull out all the stops and really like just and that also kind of ties into like reusing so many of the sprites and like having all of it really kind of has the energy in that. When you look at it in that context, it has the energy of almost a celebration. Like it's like, look at all of the characters that we have made and the designs we have done and like the animations and the art. Like it does kind of, if you look at it in that context with that kind of 2020 hindsight, it does have the energy of a little bit of a victory lap of being like, these are like we just threw everything into the pot and sort of let it sit. Like, and I love it for that. That's what I would want it to be.
You could shop at 5 or 6 stores or just one.
Yeah.
I don't know. This game is so endearing. Like, even though I'm not good at fighting games, I just have so much fun playing this. It's great.
Like I could play this game. I could play this game and lose at it forever and always walk away feeling like I had the time of my life.
I'm glad other fighting games have incorporated the tag team stuff because it's so fun. That's what I associate fighting games as. Like, it's like picking one character. That's cool, but I like that there's like a team of 3 that you make, and that can become its own conversation, like how these characters interact with each other and how their assists can interact with the stage and everything like that. I like all that. It's like you're putting more of your identity into something that could simply be like prefab versions of one character fighting a different character. There's just like so much that make it dynamic.
100% agree.
What impact would you say that this game made on you?
Creatively speaking, I think a lot of it really shaped my mentality around like wanting to, for lack of a better way to put it, wanting to smash action figures against each other at all times forever. Unlike a lot of my peers my age, younger than I am, like I wasn't like a big fan fiction guy in my adolescence. So like I wasn't pulled into that, the fan fiction space, but like this pulled me into this gave me the same kind of like thought experience. The same kind of like, oh, what happens if you put these two together? Like this is the thing that like inspired me to like think about these kinds of stories in this sort of crossover fashion. And like that is the thing that I've carried with me for the years and years that have followed.
Yeah, what's interesting about this is like the stages aren't from other.
They're just weird little places.
They're just stages. Like it's like its own thing. It's not. Here is the X-Men level. Here's the Danger Room. Here's all this, that, and the other. Here's New York City. It's just all right. Here is some windmills. Here's a carnival stage. It's you can put your own story and tell your own story instead of following a story mode. And that's kind of like creative inspiration on its own. It's just giving you pieces and you can just make those inferences. And it's not even that kind of game anyway. It's like a fighting game, but like there's just, that's there for you. We put our own distinctive identity on this game, considering it's a crossover fighting game. You tell your stories with why these characters are punching each other in the head.
I love it.
Would you say it's influenced your taste in what you have pursued since playing it? Like, would you say like you've deepened your relationship with any of the characters that were represented in this game?
Judging by the multiple Dan Hibikis in my house, I would say, without a hesitation.
News to me.
News. Yeah. Shockingly, I would say, yes. The short answer, yes.
Yeah. You studied comic books at school. Like, would you say, were there any characters on the Marvel side that you just did not have a familiarity with that you're like, let me go deeper on this?
I mentioned, I kind of gestured towards them, but like the X-Men characters, I think like there's the cartoon characters that you know very well, but like Marrow and Omega Red and Silver Samurai like are characters that those are characters you gotta like go and learn about, and that's the coolest thing in the like that rules.
Yeah, learn about Wolverine's terrible trip to Japan.
Yeah.
It's this thing where it's not trying to represent at that point almost 40 years of comic book history and 20 plus years of Capcom history. It's just, it feels like a party, but not in not a Mario party or even a Super Smash Brothers party. Just these guys who like got really good at making fighting games, just making the biggest fighting game they could. It just
feels like a celebration of everything that they've been doing.
We got these characters that we like. We got these characters that we made. Let's have some fun. I like that Jill Valentine just enters the stage every single time saying, "I'm a member of Stars." Great catchphrase, Jill. Thank you.
Good job. We appreciate this.
Every single time she enters, "I'm a member of Stars." Anything else, Jill? Okay, cool. Have a great day.
Well, if you're a member of Stars, you have to tell us. If somebody asks,
it's like announcing that you're the FBI. Open up instead.
I'm a member of Stars.
Jeff, Capcom calls you. They're like, Jeff, we need your help making a new Marvel vs. Capcom game. We called Justin Wong. He didn't pick up.
Sure.
It's on you now. Help us. What advice would you give them? Selfishly, what would you want?
Selfishly, I want Dan Hibiki.
Okay.
But like, get wild with it. Bring trash characters. Don't let them make decisions by committee. Throw in the weirdest, oddball characters that you can find. A character being fun outweighs a character being like popular. Like Blackheart is here. Like put in weird little freaks for the weird little freaks to enjoy.
Yeah.
I would say like you've got X number of you've got 40 roster slots. In this version I'm pitching that there are 80 characters because this is the game that I want to make. I would say go and find like 1 to 2 characters from as many comic books or as many corners of the Marvel universe as you can find. Fill the roster with them and then just like pick the ones that you like and like go as many weird directions as you can go. Because like the Marvel universe is vast and weird and like it is easy to, I think, build towards fighting game mentality. You need a big guy, you need a Hulk, you need a quick hit character, you need a Shoto. Tronbon's a weird fucking character.
Yeah.
Like Tronbon's whole vibe is weird. Amingo's vibe is so weird. Blackheart's fighting style is so weird. Throw in some very odd character and like characters who are there because they're fighting. Like I don't think. Let me look at the Infinite cast again.
Yeah, like Tronbot and Servbot being in this game and the Servbots being in like Dead Rising and all that, you would think that Mega Man Legends was a bigger game series than it was, but it wasn't. They canceled the third one that was supposed to come out like a full decade after the second one.
You know who would be a really fun character? And like this is the vibe that I got in head. Put Reed Richards in there. Make a character like you've got Dhalsim. Like go for Reed Richards. Go for a stretchy guy.
Right, because they did Super Scroll in Marvel vs. Capcom 3, but they didn't do just one guy.
Pick characters that you're like, oh, this guy's gonna be so weird to see in a fighting context. Like it's why Phoenix Wright is such a fun addition, because like he fights in a way that does not feel like it belongs in Marvel vs. Cap or in like a fighting game. And like that's what I want to see from all of the Marvel and Capcom picks is like, what happens when we pick this character? Like, I think like a Rivals character that I think like I'm very happy that she's in there. Like, give me some Squirrel Girls. Give me some characters that you're like, okay, this person's got to be in here, and it's going to be really funny when we throw them in.
Yeah, like on the Capcom, like they put in Amaterasu in Marvel vs.
Exactly.
Capcom. That's not even a person. That's a wolf. You put a wolf in your fighting game.
That's a magical wolf,
and she rules. But yeah, like the thing I like about Rivals is how it does that like smart thing of balancing like the obvious with the more obscure. Is like
give me the Jeff the Land Sharks. Like give me the weird characters that make you pause and go like, what in the hell? And then you play them and you're like, oh, I get it.
More people are talking about Cloak and Dagger now than when there was a Cloak and Dagger TV show.
Yeah.
There's probably more people currently watching the Cloak and Dagger TV show because of Marvel Rivals than we're watching it when it was airing. Yeah. Like I'm just happy. Like you have this opportunity to actually like bring light to characters that do not get their time in the sun, and not because like you're being told by the company to do so, but because you feel like there's an opportunity here that hasn't been delivered on in some way. It's great. Give me that stuff. That's what's also interesting to me about I haven't played Marvel Midnight Suns yet, but I like that premise of that game a lot, because it's like, all right, let's hang out with Blade and do some weird shit on the side.
Going to the movies with Blade is everything to me.
I think Blade should be in every video game that has the Marvel. I think Blade should just be in every video game.
Blade's great. You put my other advice, put Blade in it. Like cool sword guy, guaranteed hit.
Yeah. I'm sure we could talk about like this game for hours, but I feel like we got pretty good.
I think that this feels like a good trail off moment.
That's Marvel vs. Capcom 2. Before I end the episode, I like to give the guests an opportunity to recommend some things based on their love of Marvel vs. Capcom 2. What would you recommend to people, whether that's comics, film, television, music, radio? What would you recommend someone who likes Marvel vs. Capcom 2 pursue afterwards?
I would recommend, and it's easier to do now than it was when I did it. I recommend like go and explore, it's easy to recommend the Marvel side, right? There are comics galore, like comics is my background, but like go explore specifically the background and lore of the Capcom video games in Marvel vs. Capcom. Because I do genuinely think there's wonderful, weird little details across all of these games that, like we were saying through so much of this interview, like are labors, like there's so much love buried in the little storytelling bits of those games that like I really would love people to experience. Rainbow Micah, the amount of like other wrestlers that exist in Rainbow Micah's like purview fills my heart with joy. And like those are the things that I want people to experience, because everybody's going to be like, oh, I can go read Marvel comics, but like go read the Street Fighter comic books. Go discover the stories that are happening when Street Fighter stuff is going on. Because I love those stories with all of my heart. Go read the history of Dan Hibiki, both on screen and off, because it's delightful and weird. That's my recommendation.
Right. Great recommendation. I don't really have much to add to that. I would add, hey, X-Men. X-Men are cool.
Go read some X-Men. Go watch X-Men. X-Men 97. Go watch X-Men 97. It's wonderful. It was really very good. Go read some X-Men comics, especially the old 80s Claremont runs, and read some weird read the Morrison run from the 2000s, because they also got deeply weird with it, and like go celebrate the odd little corners of superheroes in video games, because that's what the developers of this game did.
Comics famously, especially American comics, famously very hard to get into, but I feel like X-Men's, there are like just true general recommendations, like the Claremont and the Morrison stuff, that like that's pretty safe to get into.
Yeah.
And it's a great jumping off point to get into other stuff within that. Then you can like, see, because like even within X-Men by itself, there's just so many like different configurations and runs and everything that you can like go into, and there's so many resetting points because of the nature of comics and the status quo, like the Hickman stuff. And like you said, like I think the Morrison stuff was meant to be like a jumping off point that could also be a jumping in point, all that. Yeah. But I'd also recommend X-Men 97 on the television side of things. That's a great jumping in point. It does sort of like pick up where a story leaves off, but it doesn't expect you to have watched the old 90s X-Men cartoon at all. It's just very like, here's some cool shit, and this is a story that we're telling, and it is very beginner friendly. I certainly don't remember all the 90s X-Men cartoon,
and they do a good job of like catching you up on the details that you need to know on an episode by episode basis.
Yeah, it just catches the soap opera nature of comics and the X-Men in particular so well, while also delivering on some really cool like action scenes and just really cool story moments within them. Gambit rules. Gambit going to end the episode now. Jeff, thank you for coming on. Please promote the hell out of yourself.
Really, truly, I make podcasts. You can hear me like interview people while we play 2-player games together on Party of One at partyofonepodcast.com. You can hear me make characters with my best friend at All My Fantasy Children right here on the Moonshot Network. You can buy my book, The Ultimate Fantasy Character Creator, in stores. You can also find that on Amazon or whatever your favorite local indie bookstore is. Support it, local indie bookstores. But mostly you can find all of my stuff at jeffstormer.com, or you can find me most prominently on social on Blue Sky at jeffstormer.gobirds.online.
Thanks, Jeff. And thank you so much for taking the time to be on this show. It's been a long time coming. I really appreciate talking to you and nerding out over all this stuff. And thank you so much for listening to this episode of Select and Start. Once again, I'm your host, editor, and promoter, Kiefer. If you enjoyed this episode, please give the show a positive review wherever you're listening to this. Engagement helps the show, and your feedback will improve it. If you want to get more engaged, give the show a follow on Blue Sky at Select and Start. If you have thoughts about Marvel vs. Capcom 2 or any other games we've discussed, send a DM or leave a comment, and I will gladly read it on the show. You can also support the show on Patreon for at least $1 a month. You'll get early access to new episodes, as well as extended episodes with exclusive content. You could have gotten a longer version of this episode. That's on patreon.com/Kiefer's Corner. You can find a link to that and the rest of my projects in the description of this episode. Select and Start is part of the Moonshot Network, which is supported by its own Patreon. Find out more on moonshotpods.com. The art for the show is made by my best friend, Avery Ott. You can follow him on social media with the handle at AveryRobinOtt. That's AVRY, Robin OTT. The show's theme song was composed by Mike Petrie. You can check out the links in the description for both of their work, as well as Jeff's. All right, I think that's it. I'm going to take you for a ride. Gambit going to end the episode now.
Don't give up. Challenge again.